A massive wall of water slams into bare rock, effortlessly threatening to erase anyone standing in its path. In his poem, Storm on the Island, Seamus Heaney records the precise mechanics of an asymmetrical power struggle. The text pits the desperate physical preparations of an isolated human community against the indifferent forces of nature. Heaney engineers this imbalance directly into the text, weaponizing poetic form to actively dismantle human structures line by line. The poem operates as a structural simulation. It forces the reader to experience humanity's inability to control its environment. The battlefield is the Aran Islands. It is a harsh, barren landscape completely devoid of natural shelter or trees to break the wind. The islanders adapt to this hostility by attempting to engineer safety. They build squat houses and sink heavy stone walls deep into the rock. This physical defense translates into the poem's opening declarative axiom: "We are prepared." It is a dangerous display of human arrogance. Looking at this split-screen dashboard, we can divide the poem's mechanics into two competing datasets. On the left is System A, the rigid architecture of human preparation. On the right is System B, the chaotic data points of natural omnipotence. Understanding this text requires tracking exactly how the expanding chaos of System B systematically overwhelms and breaks the rigid defenses of System A. To maintain order, the islanders deploy a specific structural defense, a steady, conversational rhythm embedded directly in the text. This diagram highlights the foundational architecture of System A, iambic pentameter. Iambic pentameter is a strict metric pattern consisting of 10 syllables per line, with a paired rhythmic stress falling on the second syllable of each pair. Steady, measured pace. As the blocks lock into a solid wall beneath the text, this constant da-da rhythm mimics a steady human heartbeat, projecting a false sense of conversational control over the impending chaos. The speaker reinforces this control through colloquialisms, casual phrases like "you know what I mean," using informal language as a psychological coping mechanism to normalize the threat. These conversational tags constantly draw the reader into a collective we, projecting a unified and resilient community front. System A's power relies entirely on an illusion. The community has manufactured a collective order that acts as a highly fragile shield against the reality of the storm. This target map illustrates nature's counteroffensive. The storm operates not as passive weather, but as a highly coordinated military strike. Heaney deploys a specific semantic field of warfare, arming the text with verbs like strafes, salvo, and bombarded. By comparing the wind to a fighter plane, Heaney forces the reader to experience a calculated, malicious aerial assault. This military language is reinforced by phonetic weaponry, the aggressive, percussive use of plosive consonants. Words like blows, the word blast, and the word pummels force the speaker's mouth to create sharp, violent bursts of sound upon recitation. These hard consonant sounds function as linguistic bullets striking a reader, making the act of reading the text itself feel dangerous. Nature's true power is active, inescapable aggression. It strips the humans of their agency, reducing prepared engineers into helpless targets trapped under a relentless siege. Nature's chaos eventually begins to physically fracture the human structural defenses within the actual layout of the poem. Looking at the full 19 lines of the poem, these clashing random colors highlight the complete absence of a consistent rhyme scheme, a stark contrast to the strict iambic meter established earlier. True order cannot be enforced upon nature. Humanity can only attempt to partially organize it. The ultimate structural failure of the poem's defensive walls comes through enjambment. Enjambment is a poetic technique where a sentence continues without a pause beyond the end of a line, spilling into the next. As the arrows show, the sentences of the poem spill rapidly over their metric line boundaries, refusing to be contained by punctuation or formal margins. This visual overflow forces a breathless, panicked reading pace. It perfectly replicates the overwhelming, continuous barrage of the storm. The physical structure of the poem itself has been overpowered,
proving that human boundaries are entirely artificial and easily washed away by natural forces.
As the physical structures collapse, we see the psychological toll of the storm take hold, as nature's behavior shifts violently from recognizable to alien. Heaney highlights this shift with a specific oxymoron, describing the ocean spray as something that spits like a tame cat turned savage. An oxymoron is a figure of speech in which two seemingly opposing terms appear together. This simile represents the ultimate betrayal. The docile environment they thought they owned has suddenly turned unpredictably lethal. Heaney enforces this isolation through the poem's structural format, the dramatic monologue. A dramatic monologue is a poem written as a one-way conversation, where the speaker has no audience to reply. This exposes the illusion of the collective we. In reality, the speaker is talking entirely into a void, receiving no help, no comfort, and no response. The true devastation of the storm is the psychological realization that the community is entirely isolated, unprotected, and alone. If we zoom out to look at the poem's macrostructure, we can understand the long-term, inescapable reality of the islanders. This diagram isolates the top and bottom lines to highlight the specific half-rhymes connecting the very first couplet, squat and slate, to the very last couplet, air and fear. A half-rhyme is a poetic device where words have similar but not identical sounds. As the arrow spins, this phonetic mirroring creates a cyclical structure, structurally trapping the entire narrative in an endless loop. This structural loop directly mirrors the islanders' daily reality. The exhausting cycle of preparation, destruction, and recovery is never-ending. Their perceived resilience is actually a form of entrapment. They must continually endure this exact same trauma, unable to ever truly win. This brings us to the poem's volta. A volta is a dramatic shift in tone or thought within a text. Here, the arrogant preparation of line 1 finally dissolves into fear. The text leaves us with a striking final realization. Strange, it is a huge nothing that we fear. This is a terrifying paradox. The wind and the empty air are entirely invisible, yet they hold destructive power over the physical world. The complete journey of the text moves from the physical engineering and rigid structural defenses of the opening lines to psychological surrender in the conclusion. Heaney's masterpiece ultimately proves that human power is merely a temporary, highly fragile construct facing an endless, indifferent void.